Hi guys, welcome to the second episode of Fan Memories. Last time we had Rahul Sargopan who spoke about the Eden 2001 Test match, and today we have Hari Gomatam joining us, and he's going to talk about the MCG Boxing Day Test match, India versus Australia. He was one of the lucky fans to attend the match at the ground, and Hari is my cousin. He's one of the biggest cricket aficionados I know, and he has lots of things to share about the stories about cricket, how he started liking the game, and the experience of watching the game at MCG, which is the cauldron of cricket. So hi Hari.
Hello, Aditya and Aditya.
Yeah, so we have today Aditya also joining us, the other Aditya. He can't miss this conversation. He said I'll be there. So yeah, so Hari, Hari is based in Australia, as I told, and as I told you, he's been watching cricket for quite a while, and he's one of those guys who really looks at all the nuances of the game, the commentary. He cares about the game. So, Hari, what was your first instance with the game when you started liking the game, the cricket?
Yep. First of all, thank you for having me as a part of your podcast, and you guys are doing an amazing job. And For me, cricket was basically something that happened at home. My grandfather, my mother's father, used to play for Tamil Nadu.
Wow.
And this was the MJ Gopalan days, where Tamil Nadu was a pretty strong side. And so that's how cricket conversation started to happen. But for me, looking at a game and watching it closely happened for the first time when the 1992 World Cup was televised in India. And like you had mentioned in one of the previous podcasts, Aditya, that I think it was the colored clothing, the white ball, floodlight cricket, and the timing as well of a match happening in late afternoon in India. All that I think was one of the big reasons, and it was also just about the time when we started having the set-top box, Dish TV, and there was Prime Sports as a private sports channel that was starting to come into India. But that was really, I would say, in terms of a milestone, that really was my first series that I started following cricket and understanding it better. And then subsequently, I had the opportunity to watch my first Test match at Chepauk. Which was a test match that India played against England, and this was an English side that had Gooch, Atherton, Robin Smith, Hick at number 5, and they were a pretty solid side with Malcolm, DeFreitas, Tufnell, and their only weak link was Blackie, who was their wicketkeeper. And I know that because every time I bought Big Fun, I got a Blackie card. I don't know why, but and that's how I remember Blackie so well.
So this is 93. This is 1993.
This was end 92, 93.
Yeah, Azhar, you played really well in that series. I remember. Yeah.
Yes. Yep. Azhar, and it was also Kambli's debut series as well, and the English leg spinner was Salisbury, who was charismatic guy, but just couldn't manage the brown Indian pitches. But it was an interesting series, and I remember looking forward to Neil Fairbrother coming out to bat, because I'd watched Neil Fairbrother as a part of the 92 World Cup, and him hitting the ball out of the park, which was not a normal thing back then. We didn't have too many people that were hitting the ball.
Fairbrother was one of those prototype Audi players, right? He was one of those guys who started defining Audi cricket. I remember, and that too coming from England was a surprise. And just the context, Aditya looks lost here because he was not born.
No, I was born, but I was probably a toddler.
Yeah, probably toddler. It's the same case. He's like, what am I doing in this podcast? Talking with two old people. We'll get there. We'll get to your timeline soon. So yeah, continue. Fair brother, right? Yeah.
Yes, fair brother. And I remember sitting down and I had a couple of mamas next to me telling, "Hey, fair brother, one time we'll have to ready for catch." And I'm sitting there warming up my hands to actually wait for a ball to come my way. But then came Rajesh Chavan to get fair brother out of the slips.
Yeah.
They actually had a miserable tour. England lost that series 3-0.
Yeah.
But that was the first match that I went to, and then there was the World Cup that happened in India, which as someone like me who had the majority of the childhood in the 90s, that would have been a significant landmark. And to see an Asian country actually beat and come win the tournament. It was great. I was listening to Sangakkara's recent interview with Ravi Ashwin,
right,
in which he was talking about the significance of '96 World Cup, and like even today, just to comprehend that victory seems
right
a big feat for a country like Sri Lanka.
Yeah, and they won it fair and square by skill. It was not like some luck or something. They really dominated, and beating India in Eden in that time was like, I mean, that's a huge thing, right? More than 1 lakh people at your face.
They were like Bangladesh now, right? Sri Lanka was at that time.
In a way, but in a way you can say, but far more talented. But the thing with Sri Lanka, we forget is Sri Lanka played a lot of ODIs because they don't play too many test matches. All these players like Ranatunga, De Silva, they had like a lot of experience playing ODI cricket. So they were like pretty consummate professionals by that time. And so that was a bit underestimated. So yeah, 96 Sri Lanka, and then Sachin also had a fabulous World Cup in 96, right? Like 537. And he didn't have a bad sponsor. Can you believe in that World Cup? Like, he didn't have a bad sponsor. Yeah, you had like Manjarekar and all having Foursquare and all that. Tendulkar didn't have a bad sponsor. So that tells you the time, and he like 537 runs he scored, I guess, in that World Cup. So yeah.
So I've followed Sachin obviously very closely. I would say more after the innings in New Zealand, which probably was a defining innings for him as well in limited overs cricket.
Yeah.
And then my till date, my best memory of watching a test match, it was the 99 Pakistan test in Chepauk.
Oh. Were you one of those guys who stood up?
I was.
Knowledgeable Chennai crowd. Thank you for getting us that tag.
And it was an amazing day, just to watch Sachin battle it out, and the way Saklan was actually bowling that day was it's just, if you are a genuine cricket lover, you would appreciate every minute of minute, whatever footage of that game that's even available today on YouTube. It's just pure gold, except for maybe Afridi's innings, but otherwise it's pure gold.
Let's not talk about him. yeah. I think he was he was, I think 13 at that time, no? Or 13 years old or something.
He was born. He was born then.
Just born, straight out of hospital, yeah. Anyway, so talking about, cricketing memories, MCG and watching these matches in these big stadiums, these cauldrons like Eden, like Chepauk, historic stadiums. So MCG would have been like a big dream, right? For you, because that being the biggest stadium and the best atmosphere and all that. So was that a dream of watching a match in MCG? How did that pan out?
Always, and having followed Australian cricket and especially Australian broadcasting more than cricket.
Yeah.
There's always the ritual of getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and switching on the TV, or sometimes I've had to keep it at low volume because people at home would still probably be sleeping. Just to listen to Bill Lawry say it's all happening at the MCG.
Yeah.
Or it's a beautiful day at the G.
Yeah.
And so with carrying all those memories and why Boxing Day was such a big ritual with English and Australian cricket.
Right.
It was pretty special. My first visit to MCG was when I came here as a tourist, which was just before the Cricket World Cup happened, and it was disappointing because they were relaying the turf. So it was, for me, it was like I am in Melbourne, I'm inside MCG, but I'm looking at the ground I always played, which was Gopalapuram ground.
Dude, that's also the G, right? That's also the G.
Exactly.
Right. It's our G.
So, correct. It was different G. But then when I actually moved, my first match at the G was the India South Africa World Cup match, which probably had the best moment of India's World Cup journey, which was De Villiers' run out. And that game had about 80, I think 86,000 odd people watching it.
Wow.
And it was a great atmosphere. I think with about, say, maybe 100 South African supporters, and the rest were all rooting for India.
Yeah, seriously.
So is that always like that in MCG? Predominantly Indian crowd turns up in huge numbers?
Across Australia, I'm probably going to call you junior. Across Australia, it is you find a lot of Indian supporters that rally for the Indian team, but in cities like Sydney and Melbourne, the population is higher, so the turnout will be that much. And because of the stadiums, some of the important matches get scheduled as well, because unlike India, Australia just has a handful of stadiums to schedule their matches in. So yes, I know there's a long-winded answer, Junior, but that's yes, it is a common sight.
Oh, I mean, that's awesome, because many of the...
it has become a common sight across the world, right? Like wherever you go, even in England or South Africa. That's the advantage of having 100 plus crore people, right? You just give like 0.2% every, you just sprinkle them across the stadiums and they're there. And yeah, it's a problem. But anyway, I think it'll become a future business, right? Like we'll wear like 100 of us will wear South Africa jerseys, just pay us. Yeah. So on the 2015 World Cup was the first experience, and so that was like the first competitive match you watched there in MCG.
At the MCG, that was the first competitive match that I watched. Yes, the World Cup game. Subsequently, I watched Sri Lanka, Bangladesh.
Right.
At MCG, the highlight there was Dilshan and Sangakkara made centuries.
Right.
And it was very, very memorable to watch Sangakkara bat, and I'd read so much about his batting, but it was the first time I actually got to see him bat, and it was just beautiful. He's like a beautiful song when he's in full form.
Probably the best looking batsman you watched, one of the best looking. You would say that about Sangha?
Absolutely, and to your earlier point, Adi, with these stadiums and the way they are designed, the sound of the ball coming off the bat is actually very different to the acoustics of the stadium. And that afternoon in the MCG, Sangakkara was the sound of his bat was just beautiful.
Yeah,
and it looked like everyone else they were sweating except for him, and his runs just kept ticking. He didn't sweat at all.
Right.
I think he had a great World Cup. I think 4 consecutive hundreds or something. Yeah, he was in his best form that time. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, Sangakkara, the way he closed out his career is one of the craziest stories, right? He peaked when he ended. And he also went to the county cricket and he was scoring tons of runs there also. Like he was breaking records, like 100-year-old records and all that. So coming to this test match, which is like the 2018 test match, which was like India-Australia series. And we must remember that this was aftermath of the Smith and Warner scandal and all that. The way cricket was viewed in Australia. The sandpaper gate. The way cricket was viewed in Australia, the team was perceived, everything changed, and it was like an important series to get back some of the attention which cricket had lost. And Indian team also probably had the best bowling attack they had since all the touring teams. They've come probably the best fast bowling attack they had. And I know that the first match we won it, and the Perth we lost it. We came back after a loss, right? And so what was the anticipation when you went to the ground? Were you expecting a walkthrough or like what?
So the mood of the Australian media right from the beginning of the series was in a way different to what it has traditionally been. And on the other hand, the mood of the Indian camp was again a flip to what they've traditionally been. But I think even before landing, Kohli was talking about a series win in Australia.
Right.
And a lot of cricket experts and broadcasters had already been talking about it.
Right.
And so when the team landed, and then there was that footage about on Kohli practicing in the nets.
Oh yeah.
And the sound that his bat was making.
Yeah. He was like, it was like with a sledgehammer and coming to kill them, right? Yeah.
And that can actually intimidate any side, which I don't know if you guys got the chance to watch The Test, which was the documentary that's on Amazon Prime.
Right.
Yeah. And there is reference to that particular video footage and how it did have a psychological impact.
Yeah.
Yep. And so they won in Adelaide, and it was good to watch them win in Adelaide because Adelaide was probably, we should have won Adelaide in the previous tour, where Kohli got hundreds in both the innings when he was captaining. So it was good to see us win in Adelaide. It was a new stadium in Perth, and so when India landed in Melbourne, they knew that the pitch at MCG, which is the drop-in pitches that they have in Australia, was not going to be the one that's usually the likes of a Gabba or a Perth, and that was a big psychological advantage. What India had to fix was their opening pair. They had issues with Murli Vijay wasn't coming off.
Yeah.
And KL Rahul was struggling. And so India win the toss, and in come Agarwal and Vihari.
Yeah.
Who are Agarwal making his debut on a Boxing Day test match.
Yeah.
And a series defining match, because it's rare that you come to Boxing Day, which is usually the third test match of the series, with series level.
Correct. Yeah.
It's usually Australia dominating all the way, and probably Melbourne and Sydney are more the spots where the touring teams would have actually warmed up to the Australian conditions. But both the teams coming in 1-1.
Right.
It was a big platform and stage set up for these two guys, and the first hour's cricket was just one of the best that I've seen in terms of how mentally hard Agarwal and Vihari were.
Yeah.
Because for Australia, although they didn't have Warner and Smith for that series, they still had Hazelwood, Stark, Cummins, and Lyons.
The best bowling attack.
So correct. So they still had the best four that they had.
Yeah, I always cite this thing that whenever they say that, they talk about Smith and Warner, I tell them that still the bowling attack was still there. I mean, that was same attack, and that was probably the best bowling attack as an overall attack, right? And batsmen still had to do the job. So we can't really discredit that series in that way. And
I think Cummins was at his best at that time. leading up to the
Cummins was just
series.
peaking.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And one more thing, this series interesting was they didn't play at the Gabba, right? The Gabba tour. So
Yes.
whenever they begin in Gabba, I mean, Australia never loses there. And this was one of the series
Correct.
where they didn't start in Gabba. Automatically you're pushed back, right? When you lose in Gabba. And the only series where we did decently under Ganguly was when Ganguly saved that match, like 144 in Gabba. So that also played a bit of advantage. Like I remember Australian fans at this cricket site and they're crying foul, saying, "You guys are starting in Adelaide, the favorite ground, and this is all BCCI set up and all that." So, yeah, that played a big part.
Yeah. I could be wrong, Aditya, but I think it was because Gabba was hosting a day-night test match, which BCCI at that point said no to. So India didn't play a day-night test at all, which has now become a kind of a tradition in Australia for them to have at least one day-night test match as a part of the summer. But it was coming back to that Boxing Day test. The first session, what Agarwal and Vihari showed in terms of their character, and I know there's a lot of talk about how the Indian domestic system and circuit um, has actually changed in the last, say, 8 to 10 years, and how it has started to prepare players and the exposure these guys are getting in terms of playing for the India A team and in the India A team touring different parts of the world. That was right in front of our eyes to see in terms of what Agarwal and Vihari were doing in the middle.
Yeah.
Agarwal is an amazing. I've watched Agarwal bat in Bangalore. When I was in Bangalore, I've seen him in a couple of games where he had batted for Karnataka.
Right.
Really good batsman, but that session of play was really hard because the Australian bowlers were coming really hard at them.
Right. Probably they wanted to seize the initiative
but
after
then,
Perth, right?
Yes, and they were on a high. They could. The Australian team believed that we could pin this Indian team down if we keep the same level of aggression.
Right.
And then there comes Agarwal, and I think they both took a few blows in that session.
Yeah.
But shook them. They still went on to bat, and then Chepauk. Again, like Sangakkara, but on a different level. I'd never seen Chepauk bat before that innings. He literally didn't see this. In some of his defense was mind blowing because the ball actually didn't move out of the pitch, and it just stayed there right under his eyes, and it's about 40 degrees. Cummins is bowling his heart out, and Chepauk just takes his bottom hand off and is defending the ball.
Yeah,
like if,
he was like a concrete wall in front of the stumps. Like it's like this, and I think there's nothing more demoralizing than seeing the ball just dying on the pitch, more than hitting a 6 or a 4.
Exactly.
I mean, at least that takes some effort. Exactly. You're like just.
Yeah, I think Cummins came out and said he had enough of Pujara and he's worried that whether the same Pujara will turn up for the series because he was the hardest one to get out in the Indian team.
I mean, he really. I mean, people are always talking about Kohli and Rahane. The more flashy players. Kohli, obviously, the genius. So they talk about it. But Pujara, that series, the way he played, was one of the all-time great batting performances by an Indian.
Absolutely, and how they say the traditional Test cricket method of wearing the bowlers out and then trying to cash in on the third session was exactly when the shadows were growing is when Pujara's run meter was ticking, and like you mentioned, I think you just didn't want to be a Cummins or a Hazelwood that day, where it was scorching hot, and they were bowling their heart out, and Pujara would just not move.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is psychologically intimidating.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think
when you
Gavaskar
have that kind of a game.
Gavaskar might have been crying somewhere in the corner of the room, looking at that, the batting, and he's like, "This is what I said by my voice. I've been saying this for so many years. This is what I meant. Finally, someone's doing it." And yeah, Pujara is one of the stars, and obviously, and the bowling star was Jasprit Bumrah, right? Bumrah is like the fast bowler right now, along with Cummins and Rabada and all that. So, what was the experience of watching Bumrah? Because, of course, that action first thing, and that pace generated by an Indian fast bowler. So, how was it when Australians are fending for the bounces from an Indian fast bowler? How did that feel?
So to actually probably take a step back, Aditya, it was the first time India was coming to Australia with a pace attack that actually toured as a part of that tour. The depth and the speed in which the guys could bowl. And I remember HarshaBhogle shared this in one of the after match meetings that we had, which is organized by a local cricket community here.
Okay, stop right there. So,
And
hi. So, this is one of the guys, he has met HarshaBhogle. So, we are like just putting a spotlight right on that. And he has a fantastic photo with Bogle, which we'll add in this video. You can see.
Yeah.
Okay, how did he just pass that news like that? That's like blockbuster.
no, like I said, it was thanks to the local one of the local Indian
Yeah.
cricket communities. They call the Swami Army,
Yeah.
which and in that evening with Harsha, there was a lot of Q&A, and he spoke about how Virat Kohli, I think this was in 2014, had told him about his plan of having 4 fast bowlers that could bowl 135 plus kilometers per hour, and he believed that if he had 4 guys that could bowl 135 plus, he could actually go win a series in Australia.
Wow.
And so that team that actually traveled was and won in Australia. Now, if you look back at the series, was Virat Kohli's team that actually came and actually won it. And so and the reason why I'm saying all that is because usually if it's a day that India is bowling, I am not I'm not the ones that would actually like to go to the stadium and watch it, because I'm not a big fan of India, especially when India is touring. But this time around, for this tour, it was the other way. People wanted to come and see this Indian attack bowl, and it was amazing. It was such a pleasure to actually see the rhythm between the likes of Shami, Ishant Sharma, and Bumrah, and Bumrah.
Yeah, and you had Umesh Yadav waiting in the wings also. So he was also fast bowler.
Correct.
Not fast, medium or medium fast bowler.
Correct.
But when you are looking from the stadium, who looked so menacing? Was that Bumrah or Shami?
Ishant Sharma actually has a great rhythm. When you're watching Ishant Sharma, he's got a great rhythm with the way his run up to the crease, his release, and everything.
Beautiful action.
Shami, beautiful action. Shami is very composed. Bumrah is more like a teaser. Bumrah is like, are you really taking those 3 steps to deliver that ball at 140? Like, because you're walking 5 steps, you're jogging for 3, and it's coming off. And like you mentioned, Dadi, I think that was the surprise factor. The bounce that he managed. Travis Head was struggling. Travis Head was one of the guys that actually he did start to play Bumrah a bit confidently, but just when that was starting to happen, it's again, like they say, cricket is a game of angles. Bumrah changed his angle to come around the wicket and just shake everything that probably what he had prepared himself for. And watching Bumrah side on to watching Bumrah from the side screen is completely different. When you're watching him side on, you just don't know what's happening.
He I think
Yeah.
made a mockery of all the bowling mechanics and all those theories and coaching manuals, right? Like from where he
Yep.
generates the pace. There was a recent interview with Michael Holding where he spoke about from where he is generating the pace. And yeah, very peculiar action, and also someone similar to Wasim Akram also. Wasim Akram also had a very short run up in a way, but he had more of a conventional action. But Bumrah is like altogether new.
And Wasim Akram was a big man. Like
Yeah, yeah,
he's a big unit.
yeah.
Or even if you look at there was Macmillan in South Africa
Brian McMillan,
who who hardly took an effort to come to the crease, but Macmillan was a big guy as well. Bumrah is probably in terms of the figure, he's probably the leanest one of the lot